Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to see, even at 4:30, that you're smiling and waiting. And, well, it's quite an interesting thing in this session. So, coming back to this session, way to protect free speech of journalists, media freedom from torture, harassment, and suppression. This is a case study. Basically, I'm presenting what happened in Sri Lanka to MTV Channel Private Limited as a case study so that anyone could take it as a case study if your journalists are being suppressed or subject to harassment or torture, then how you should act with either with the government bodies or the state-led institutions. So let's move on to the next slide. Yes. Now, I'll just take you through. It's what is the role of media? It's a watchdog. And I hope that the slides will be circulated, isn't it, Deborah? Okay. So if that's the case, I'm not going to take much of time explaining the slides. So it's the watchdog and the protector of fourth estate. That's the role of the journalist. And they should not be subject to arbitrary government control, state-led torture, harassment, restriction, or censorship. That's where the true freedom of media is protected. So, yeah, that would be fine. Yeah, then how do you stand up to guard the truth and trust in times of crisis? Role of watchdog, protecting the fourth estate, the concept, in a democratic society, and the freedom of media. Let's see the recent Sri Lankan case as a case study. How to handle. Shall we move on? So this is the incident, I think, well known to everybody, what had happened in Sri Lanka, the economic crisis, and then the previous regimes that they led the country to poor state of affairs. So I think the public broadcaster who was on the podium, he took up the position that it's like, it is not possible for the public broadcaster to take a very active role in a situation like this. Because it's like, in an Asian situation, it's like, it's unlike the Europe. They have their different arrangements. So it could be a independent media or a public or a private media who could take the lead. So then MTV Channel Private Limited, they took up a very front line and exposed this corruption and then the economic crisis in a larger extent. So obviously the regimes will be not in good terms with the broadcaster. So what happened in 2022, July 9th? It's the massive protest in Colombo, and then people started protesting, and the one regime was taken out, and somebody else took up the lead thereafter. So, same day, night, the broadcaster's journalist was brutally attacked. I think I don't need to explain. It's like, now it's published in the World Broadcasting Union's website, as well as in the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union's website, very clearly. And 2022, 10th July, so what did this company do? The lawyers acting for the company, these are the important steps for the case study. They wrote to the head of the police with a copy to the Human Rights Commission. This is the first step that you should be following. First step, write to your Human Rights Commission with a copy. Either you could do it, either you copy to the Human Rights Commission of your country or to the other human right, the UN human rights, whatever the body that you have in your country. And then write to the state, the police or the armed forces, asking on what basis this was conducted. And on 2022, 2nd of August, this company, there were 8 journalists brutally attacked. They filed the fundamental rights action, or it could be a human rights action, in the court of laws. And so what happens there has to be some process in the Human Rights Commission of your country. So in this particular instance, the Sri Lankan Human Rights Commission, they released a press notice stating that the attack is brutal. That's what had happened. And on 2022, August, the journalists were, the September, the case was taken, fundamental rights case. And then again, in the month of August, the victims who were subject to this brutal attack were called up by the CID to take statements. So this is how things happen. So now let's move on to the next slide. So the attack was brutal, as I said. It's been upheld by a domestic commission. Shall we move on to the next slide, please? And these are the fundamental rights that are being infringed. Next. And the domestic remedies. So first, you should take domestic remedies. So what are the domestic remedies they have taken? First, go before your Human Rights Commission. Secondly, file an action in your either invoking whatever the constitutional provisions. But what happens in the Asian context mostly, or rather I would qualify by saying some other Asian countries, when the journalists take this legal approach, the state authorities, they try to suppress the journalists, or maybe the media company, or it could be the people who are supporting. So this is a normal thing, unlike in Europe, this is a normal thing. And so as I said, so these are sinister plans, because you need to kind of, because even I was listening, because actually I arrived today early morning, so I couldn't listen to most of the presentations. I arrived at about 4:30. So, but I've been following, and there were certain speakers who were saying that about 500 journalists at the moment in the world are either behind the jail or some kind of undergoing some harassment or torture. So, in such a context, what you should be doing, you should first safeguard your journalists. So file action in your domestic country or the member state. And in this particular incident, the people who were brutally attacked were called to get statements from the CID. Not only them, it's the managers, shareholders, and everybody. So this is how the mentality of the certain countries that works. And may I further explain? There is one gentleman who is here from MTV. His name is Vasanta. He's there. And he was the person who was presenting that day. Ladies and gentlemen, he was presenting. He was also called to the CID to get a statement. So this shows how arbitrary the process is and how you should tactfully tackle in a situation like that. So then what should be your process? You should reach the international hands. So what did MTV do? They took up the situation to ABU and WBU. And both the organizations felt that it is a genuine case. And in fact, WBU published a statement which was kind of circulated to the head of the country from head of the country downwards. It's the part of it is there. We call upon the government of Sri Lanka to appoint an impartial body to investigate the 9th July 2022 incident and to ensure that police and security personnel do not intimidate, harass, or assault any journalists or anyone associated with the companies which employ them. So this is how you should kind of, when your people are in danger, that you should be tackling. So let's see, once you do that, what are the other actions? Do you have any further actions? Yes, you have. What are those actions? You have to invoke United Nations Special Procedure on relevant mandates. So you have to reach the United Nations, and there are mandates. There are about 4 mandates at the moment. So you need to, with the international lawyers, you need to reach the relevant mandates and invoke them. It's commonly known as OHCHR. So in Geneva, you need to present your case and build up and ask for their intervention. So this is how I wanted to to take it as a case study back to your country. And if there are, the number was very large. As the other speaker said, it's about 500 people, 500 journalists at any given time are subject to this kind of torture, harassment, or et cetera, et cetera. So this is how you should be tackling. If you don't tackle like that, what will happen is that you will not have freedom of speech. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.